The event in Miami is spectacular now. When you stand on the grid and look around at all of the fan base that's come towards us, it's a fantastic atmosphere, a party atmosphere, and one where I think Miami have done a fantastic job across the last 3 years, making one of the best races in the world. The race itself was interesting, both the sprint race and obviously the main GP on Sunday. But for us, it was one to forget. In terms of Logan, he didn't put a foot wrong, but Magnussen took him out, and the result was extensive. It's a flaw, rear suspension again, and gearbox again damaged. And in a season where we've had strong attrition in terms of parts so far, we simply need to capitalize and move forward and add performance to the car. Now we have that coming across Imola, Monaco, and Canada. There's good performance coming, but with the damage that was created this weekend, it puts us a little bit more on the back foot. Fortunately, now we're in a situation where we have 3 cars able to be used, and hopefully the third of those chassis will just remain where it is in the box for the rest of the season. Going forward though, what's clear is we've fallen back in this development race playing catch up. We've got to start bringing performance to the car and quickly in order to fight our way back up into what is a very close fought midfield championship. Welcome to the Vowles Verdict, presented by Kraken. The tyres were fine in terms of degradation. They were overheating, they were for everyone, and that just meant that you got a little bit quicker after that point rather than the same performance. But that was already taken into account. It was more that there was 2 ways of racing in Miami. The first is to go for that aggressive early undercut and take positions. And not all teams can react in that regard. When you have 2 cars and 1 pit box, one of those will lose out, as you saw. The second is once you've lost that ability, you just stay out and wait and hope that there's a safety car at a later stage that allows you to stop and come back into the field. And that's what a number of cars did, including Esteban, for example, that did benefit from that. And Norris as well, who benefited from the win. So there's just 2 different ways of doing it. The undercut wasn't huge, it was a few tenths, but it's enough to make a position relative to the teams around you. It sort of depends on where the question is asking, but there's 2 different problems. If we take qualifying first and foremost, the track temperatures were over 50 degrees Celsius. And what was happening was that if you extracted just a little bit too much performance out of that first sector, out of those high-speed corners, the tyres were done. You weren't able to get a lap time out of them afterwards. The converse is, and our drivers did it, many drivers commented the same, if you under-hit that first sector in order to have the rest of the lap, you weren't sure how much time you left on the table, and it was a fine balancing act between those 2. But in those very, very warm temperatures, the tyres were just overheating and struggling as the result. The second point that you may be referring to is Alex's large lockup that he had in the race. That wasn't related to the tyres. Actually, on lap 50, Alex went across the same bollard that Verstappen did, and he broke the floor, and the damage was huge. We didn't realize how much instantaneously, but just a lap later, it became very clear how much it was. And it was something circa a second or so of lap time performance, just to give everyone an idea. And it meant that when he hit the brakes, coming into 11, there was no downforce to stop the car. He locked up, lost all those positions, and went off. Answering the question slightly back to front, but let's talk about what is better than last year, and then we'll talk about what we need to do to make it quicker from where it is today. So last year's car had a very significant front locking problem. If you just very much hit the brakes just a little bit too hard, you would front lock, miss the apex by a long, long way, and that doesn't appear anymore. That's gone. The track also, specificity of the car last year was high. In other words, there were tracks where it was very, very performant and others where it was very poor. This year's car is actually a lot more balanced across near enough all tracks, but we're not quick enough. In part, that's a development race that we've fallen behind on, and we'll catch that back up over the next few races. But also in part, it's another characteristic of the car that we're working on. And I hope across Imola, Monaco, and Canada, we should be addressing that. The other attribute of the car is that we're struggling a little bit to get a balance between all of the high-speed corners and the low-speed corners as well. So a number of items that we're working on in the background, but the actual package itself has quite good performance. It's been fantastic having Pat on board. It allows us to really have more than one person having eyes on what issues we have today and where we want to be in 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years from now, because that's the time period required. That's the plan we set out from the beginning. This isn't going to be fixed overnight. It will be a long journey, and this is what it looks like. What Pat is very good at is looking at the long-term future of where we need to get to, and then the milestones that we have to hit on the way there. He knows what excellence looks like. He was a part of a number of teams that have clawed themselves back up into a successful position, and he knows how to effectively create the foundations to get there. We have a lot to do. Day to day, what Pat's looking at is, what are we doing in order to make sure that we work from just 1 car program to 3 car programs? How do we structure ourselves within the design office, but also how do we work with operations in order to get the time it takes from an idea to the track reduced significantly? What facilities do we need? How do we bring everyone together? What ideas are being captured and are they being worked in the right way? How should Aero work together with a design office? All of these are sort of global questions and long-term and mid-term questions that we're dealing with. So his input is invaluable, and it's one around not what we do necessarily short-term, how we bring performance, for example, to Imola, but more around how we create structures, processes, and systems that allow us to get more and more performance for every hour that we're working. And that, in turn, will have big impacts on what we do with the 47, 48, and beyond. As mentioned, the damage was extensive. And at a point in the season when we're trying to focus on bringing future performance, it does hinder us and hold us back slightly. You still need a stock of elements in order to go racing. It was rear suspension, gearbox, and floor. It won't have a material knock-on on the next 3 races because simply those were already in the pipeline along the way through. Imola might be a little bit more tough than it was previously. We have to work around what componentry we have as a result of it. The main thing I'm looking forward to over the next 2 weeks is that we're done with the flyaway races. And that means I can dedicate time here in Grove with the team as to how we execute our long-term plan. How do we not just bring the performance that we're playing across the next 3 races, but bring significant performance to the remainder of the season, to next year's season, and to the 48. And those are the real questions that come out of where we are now. But more importantly, that's the focus that I have. And the fact I'm excited by it is a positive thing. There was plenty of good news stories to come.